Incest is bad. Yeah, I said it. I've spoken in the past about various royal families and their obsession to preserve the royal bloodline through years and years of incest. Like you'd expect, you can only go so many years with nothing but incest before physical and mental deformities become very common, and no man accentuated this fact more than the late King Charles II of Spain. Charles was born November 6, 1661, to Philip IV and Maria Anna of Austria. Now this probably doesn't sound too bad, until you realize that King Philip's wife was also his niece. Unfortunately, things don't get any better from here. I can't go over the entirety of the Spanish royal lineage, but just by taking one look at their family tree, you can get a pretty good understanding about how royally fucked this family was. Over the course of about 250 years, on only 5 occasions did the royal bloodline stray from within the children of Philip and Joanne of Castile. Every name on this tree highlighted in red is a direct descendant of Joanne and Philip. Clearly, something has gone very wrong here. From the very beginning, Charles was dealt a very bad hand. He was the only surviving son of his father, making him a heir to the throne at a very young age. So young, in fact, he was made king at age 4 due to his dad's untimely death. Now this in and of itself wasn't terribly uncommon. Kings regularly died, leaving a very young boy as the next in line to the throne. Luckily, Charles was a somewhat normal boy in every way, so everything was in the clear. Okay, so that was a lie. Charles wasn't particularly normal. Some would say he was quite far from it. One of the most prominent features of King Charles was his protruding jaw. His jaw, also known as the Habsburg chin, stuck out so far he couldn't properly chew his food, and due to this and an oversized tongue, the young king could barely speak. To make matters worse, despite apparently not having any major learning disabilities, his family never bothered educating him, so by the time he became old enough to take over the throne, he couldn't even read. You would think that all of Charles' siblings would be similarly disformed, but no. Charles' sister, Margaret Theresa, was completely fine, and actually considered rather attractive for the time. It was almost like if all the gods took all the punishment of decades of incest and condensed it into one small miserable man. No, even if Charles wasn't much of a looker, he was still the king, so it was his duty to get married at some point and further the royal blood. You would think at this point somebody would have came along and said something along the lines of, you know, maybe if you guys laid off all the cousin sex, your babies would stop coming out looking all half-baked. But apparently not, as King Charles married his niece Mary Louise at age 17. Unluckily, or luckily depending on how you look at it, this marriage was short-lived, and Marie died of what is thought to be appendicitis shortly after the marriage, and before Charles was able to pass on his sickly genes to his children. Of course, Charles didn't let the death of one wife stop him from furthering his bloodline, and 6 months later he married one Marie Anne of Neuburg. While Marie Anne ended up outliving King Charles, she, like the queen before her, never ended up bearing any children, mostly because, again, due to years and years of obsessive inbreeding, King Charles was sterile. That's like getting cock-blocked by your ancestors. At this point in Charles' lifetime, he had failed to meet the expectations of being king at every turn. He was small and sickly, unable to properly run his country, and unable to produce an heir to his throne. But there was one thing King Charles was remarkably good at: not dying. For whatever reason, despite being all weak and sickly-like, he just kept on trucking. Historians have been quoted in saying he was short, lame, epileptic, senile, and completely bald by age 35, always on the verge of death, but repeatedly baffling Christendom by continuing to live. Now of course, not even the most determined of people can escape the freight train of death, and it plowed into King Charles on November 1st of 1770, just 5 days before his 39th birthday. Physicians at the time stated that during the autopsy of his body, they discovered, and I quote, "His body did not contain a single drop of blood. His heart was the size of a peppercorn. His lungs corroded. His intestines rotten and gangrenous. He had a single testicle black as coal, and his head was full of water." Now, I'm not exactly sure of the credibility of these claims, as the practicing doctors at the time were the same people that thought eating spiders would cure you of a fever. But either way, the fact that this man somehow managed to survive to almost 40 is frankly just astonishing. So there you have it, the story of one of the most incest-ridden men in history, who just so happened to be king of one of the most powerful nations in the world. He wasn't a good king, he wasn't even passable. But what he lacked in royal ability, he made up for by basically giving death a big middle finger by just continuing to live. The video is over now, so if you've made it this far, let me know if you have any ideas for upcoming videos in the comment section below. Or don't. Anyways, that's all, so thanks for watching.